Welcome. Good afternoon to many of you. Good morning to some of you, and perhaps even good evening to some international attendees. I got a peek at some of the attendees, and I did see some from across the pond. So welcome to the ALSD community and beyond. For those that don't know me, my name is Amanda Veerhoff, and pardon me, I thought I closed my email out before this. Clearly I didn't. Listen, I'm coming to you from my home, as a lot of us are today, and in my 13 years with ALSD, I don't think I've ever been as intrigued by this industry and what's going on, the evolution of it, than I have been, sitting here in this chair today. And I'm excited to talk with several thought leaders today about this evolution that's going on in our industry. To set the table before we get started for this discussion, I get the privilege to talk to 4 experts in their respective fields, and we're going to talk about this ongoing consumer behavior evolution and the impact that it's having on our industry. I think we always have to have a so what to the discussion, and truly that evolution will mean so many things to this industry. So that's what we'll talk about today. Sports and entertainment, we believe, will come back looking significantly different, at least at the front end, and that's in large part for what consumers want, what they desire, and what some of the apprehensions that they have right now are. And so with that, we're going to look at how we overcome fan fears. We're going to look at how data can help that. We'll look at what changes are imminent, and then again, what changes we might want to leave on the back burner. We'll also look at brands and business needs, and we'll look at other industries who may have cues for us in sports and entertainment. The panel is chock full of insights, and so we'll get going here momentarily, but just so you know, I am available if you'd like introductions to the panelists, or if you'd like more resources from me. My email is amanda@alsd.com, and if anybody on the panel feels compelled to give their contact information, they can. They don't have to feel pressured to do so. We'll evaluate any questions that come in from the audience here. You've got a Q&A function down at the bottom, and if there's time, and if the question, we can squeeze it in, we certainly will. I think our panelist has so much to offer with the questions that I'm going to ask. I'm fearful that we won't be able to get to the audience questions, but I already had a couple really good ones come in this morning, so thank you in advance for those that sent us questions. As a reminder, this panel is being recorded, and like all other ALSD panels, they are living on ALSD.com. We have put up a training site, if you will, on ALSD.com, where all of our materials live now and in perpetuity. And our social feeds also have all of these panels. My guess is that our panelists may share this panel as well once it's recorded, and we encourage them to do so. So with that, introductions are first. And with that, we would like each person on the panel today not only to give his or her name, title, and organization, but also give us a bit of a deeper look into what you do to set the table for the panel today. So Justin, let's start with you.
Good morning. My name is Justin Wood. I'm one of the principals and sports practice director for a firm based out of Kansas City called Dimensional Innovations, or DI. We are an experienced design, build, and technology firm, and we think about experience. How in the sports marketplace in particular, we work in several verticals, but in the sports marketplace, we're really very focused on how a venue, a team, and the brands within that all marry, and how it enhances fan experience overall. That's my perspective today.
Thanks, Justin. Karri.
Hi, my name is Karri Zaremba. I'm the founder and chief operating officer of VenueTize. We are a mobile technology and connected payments platform for smart venues, and we work with professional sports teams, leagues, casinos, hotels, mixed-use developments, and entertainment districts.
Thank you, Jenny.
Hi, yeah, I'm Jenny Dinnen with McKinsey Corporation. So co-president and owner. We are a family-run business, second generation. So I run the business with my twin sister. We're 35 years in the business, really around data analytics, customer insights, and around, as Justin said, which I love, the customer experience. So how do we empower businesses and brands to make better business decisions by connecting them and leveraging customer insight? So it's a fun space, and I love hearing about this. Data, insights, customer behavior is what I live and breathe. So thank you for having me today.
Thanks, Jenny. Russ, round us out.
Hi, Russ Simons, Chief Listening Officer for Venue Solutions Group. As most of you know, I pretty much work for all of you. We focus on how things work and try to make them better every day.
Let's dive into the prompt. So we're going to look at consumer behavior and its evolution. And I want to look at it through the lens of each speaker. And so, yes, we are going to go one by one here. Each speaker is going to tell us one significant change in consumer behavior you and or your company have witnessed since the COVID-19 pandemic began. So, Karri, I want to start with you.
I'd say the most significant thing that we're seeing is obviously concerns around people touching things or interacting with other people at close range. So a lot of what we are being asked to do is how do we create touchless, contactless experiences? How do we remove maybe some of the people from the equation in terms of interacting with a physical person as maybe you enter a building or try to pay for something at a concession stand, and still making that experience seamless and useful. But that does require, in many cases, either a modification of some of the infrastructure that most venues have in place, but absolutely a modification to the way venues are typically used to operating.
Sure, and we'll dive into that a little bit deeper here as we go. Justin, what one significant change have you seen through all this?
I think the biggest one that we see is, falls into the umbrella of just a general distrust of what you don't know, the fear of the unknown, whether or not the restaurant or venue, in our case, that you're entering into, is it clean? Can you trust that the person next to you is healthy? Can you trust that the person that's serving you is healthy? Just not knowing those things, not knowing how a restaurant or a venue has been handling COVID preparedness. I think those are the things that, there are a handful of things we can do really easily and tactically to make those things better. And then a lot of it's going to boil down to the way leadership communicates to visitors and fans, how effective that is.
Sure. Thanks, Justin. Russ?
So for me, this is the first thing that I can think of in my history professionally where both us on the facility side and our consumers on the other side, as well as participants and brands, we all have a common shared experience with regard to how COVID-19 has actually affected us. So we have sort of personal insight, and then we have to think about how we're going to leverage that personal insight into a program that is going to be believable, and that people, I go back to what Justin said, that people are going to trust. Never before have we all been on the same page.
Jenny, how about you?
I love that. I mean, I think that the biggest thing, of course, as Justin kind of touched on, confidence and trust. Right now, every study that we're seeing and everything that we're doing, now is not the time for companies to lean back and wait. I mean, obviously, nobody has the answer of what's happening, right? But if we can't communicate, people want to know what you're doing to keep them safe, what you're doing to keep their employees safe. That's one of the biggest things that we're seeing in every study across the board, is what we're doing with even employees and how we're keeping them safe, right? As people are coming into the building, they want to know how you're going to keep them safe, but even the employees on their side. So right now, in a time where, kind of two things, there's so much unknown, and there's so much that we don't know. If we can give our customers, consumers, a little bit of confidence, right? Even like for example, even for this call, right? This is a new thing of us doing all these WebExes. Before we had a prep call, you guys laid out exactly what was going to happen, how it was going to be. And there was, I mean, obviously there's unknowns of what's happening, but what can we control and how can we give them confidence of what we do know and what the pieces are? The other really big thing that we've seen is really that customers are being more exploratory in their behavior of trying new things, and being open to trying new things, which we'll get to later, which is going to be pushing us into this evolution of change. So I think now is the right time to kind of latch onto this, customers and consumers trying things that they've never done before, which is exciting to me and to us. Yeah.
It is exciting. I think you bring up a good point there as well. We're still remaining safe. A lot of us in our homes or home offices, we are still trying new things virtually and otherwise. So let's stay on the changing behaviors and let's talk about some of the fan fears and fan apprehensions. And more importantly, again, I said this on a panel before that we're not about commiserating. We're about learning what to do in light of those apprehensions and those fears, the so what of it all. So Justin, I'm going to start with you. And, DI identified several fan fears recently. In a few words, can you tell us more about those?
Absolutely. We hired a third party to help us do a survey. We had about 700 people that were sports fans, which meant they attended at least 2 live sporting events in the last year. So these are people that love coming to live sports, plan to come back at some point. We interviewed them, asked them a handful of different questions, and what really came out of it was 2 things. That there was a very small sliver of people, about 15%, that were ready to come back right now. Like, you open the doors, I'm back right now. There was another 10 or 15% that was closer to, I don't know if I'll ever come back. The good news there is that there's 70% in the middle that were, yes, I want to come back, I'm just not sure when, and here's what's making me nervous about coming back. And when we distilled down all of the information, it really broke down into 4 little buckets. And the buckets were understanding and trusting the health of others around you. 2, the cleanliness of the facility. 3, whether or not social distancing would actually be maintained once you were in the facility. And the 4th one, as I think Jenny or Karri said earlier, about touching. People want to touch less stuff. They're just generally nervous about that. And I think there are ways that all of those things can be satisfied with different tools to get those 70%-ish people that want to come back, maybe get them in there sooner.
Okay, so we have to overcome those fears. And I want you to tell us, from your perspective, whether 30,000 foot or even more specific, how do we overcome some of those fears, Justin? And certainly we'll get more granular as we go, but if you could just append what you told us now about kind of the so what, we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, I think there are different tactics that can be used in each one of those 4 different categories. I mean, some of it's as simple as digital or static signage to communicate expectations. Some of it is communication, again, from leadership of the teams and of the venues as to what's being done from a cleaning protocol. We've had a bunch of conversations around using technology so that fans can see that their seat was recently cleaned. And is that the right answer, or are we then putting too much onus in the fans and the individual consumer themselves? And is it really better coming from trusting that your team and facility managers know what the heck they're doing, they're the experts, and that they've done everything right, as right as it can be in this new world?
Let me ask you a question on that note that came in from somebody beforehand. They asked a question, and I'm paraphrasing here, about timing. We want the perception, and Justin, you know probably as well as anybody, they want the experience to still be good, the optics to still be good. They want to lessen the anxiety when people come back in. And so do we wait as long as possible for our venues to reopen? Is that part of the evaluation process, is the anxiety, the optics, and how we can bring it back as an experience like it once was? Or are we now in a time and place where we kind of have to live with it, and people understand that while maybe masks or PPE might be a little off-putting, that's just the world that we live in right now. Do you have anything to add to that? We've thought a lot about this, and I think we work in the sports marketplace. We also work really heavily in the movie theater industry. I mean, 2 slightly parallel industries, in that both of them have constantly been part of the conversation around, hey, I can have a really good experience at home with cheaper food and cheaper beers and a great view and all this kind of thing. So I think as we wade through this new world, I think we have to be really cognizant of what the experience is and make it so that the safety and cleaning measures don't eliminate the positive experience you have with your team and your brand. I think experience design right now matters more than it ever has before, and it has to be run in parallel with all of the safety and security and keeping people comfortable and safe and healthy at the exact same time. I don't know what the right answer is with regards to if they should wait a little bit longer, open a little bit sooner. I think every venue is going to make those decisions a little differently, of course, in concert with leagues. Russ?
Yeah, I think everything is going to be different, and it's going to be different everywhere. As I look at what's happened, I'm currently paying a lot of attention to South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, China, as they start to reintegrate. What are they doing that's successful? What did they have to do and stop doing to come back? Some of that is happening in Europe now, and it's making its way towards us. When we get to North America and the United States, each state is going to be different, and in many cases, each local public health authority is going to be different. So I think what we can look for is sort of common things that common themes that seem to resonate for us. But the idea that there's going to be sort of one way that's going to work for everybody collectively that's just not going to happen in this environment. And we've got to keep an open mind and really be learning from the things that are going in front of us. And that means, for mass gathering and public assembly facility environments, that means we have to look at what's happening as retail starts to open, as restaurants start to open, as people start to reintegrate into society. And we have to be paying as close attention as we can to what they've done that seem to be resonate and go well as some of the things that maybe that were challenges with. And I'm going to go back to what Jenny said, and I really appreciate her basically talking about how important employees are. As I said earlier, employees are their customers too, and they can give us great insight into what our paying customers may find to be acceptable in the environment. And I think we have to do a better job of listening to everybody here, because the truth is we have more experts now just because they lived through it. And we ignore any of that advice and any of those feelings at our own risk. I mean, we have an opportunity to really engage and deploy our employee resources.
Well, let's talk more about resources. Karri, you're the perfect one to ask this next question to, because we talked about focusing on contactless, cashless, even biometrics to pay. At this point, what you're doing, and it's proactive in this industry. Tell us more about that. We're fascinated by what you're doing.
So we're looking at, again, all of those high touch points where you would tend to have previously been very close to another person as part of the venue experience. So those typically come when you're accessing a building, if somebody's holding a handheld scanner for access control, or when you go up to pay for something. On top of that, most venues now have a fleet of kiosks deployed. That's a high touch surface. That's a common area that multiple people would be touching through the course of an event. So all of those things need to be revisited, reimagined. And so we're not looking at kind of large scale replacements of these technologies, but just how do you modify them to assuage fan concerns about what they're touching, remove those touch points where you can, and remove a lot of those high points of interaction. So we're very bullish on biometrics for all of these things, whether it's access control or payments, facial recognition being at the forefront of that. And so there is ways for people to be able to modify these existing technologies to be able to allow someone to either only interact with their own device, typically a phone, or to remove the device altogether and literally to be able to use their face for their identity, for their payments. And this does a lot of other things as well. This is a huge way to expedite lines and to reduce, people kind of converging in areas, getting people through lines much more quickly. And so it also adds for the convenience factor and for speed. And piggybacking off of something that Russ said, this is already widely adopted in the Far East. So the United States is quite far behind in terms of adopting these technologies. And to Jenny's point, COVID-19 really presents us with a wonderful opportunity where you will see adoption of these things much more widespread and aggressive than what we previously would have seen in a more gradual rollout and adoption. And I think we've heard from the industry concerns around, well, I have an older fan base, or, well, people aren't used to this, it's too much too soon. This is the time. There's no better event to start introducing these things anyway. And so we're seeing a lot more demand, a lot more quickly to implement really a leapfrog ahead approach as opposed to a more gradual progression to evolve the venue experience.
Well, you're answering the question that the person who wrote in earlier today asked anyway, is how do we still make it a seamless and enjoyable and not a cumbersome entry type of process? And technologies do that. And so they are, though, disruptive, right? Like, we're learning what disruption means, where we go with it, what we're learning from it. And as you pointed out, this is a good experience and time to do so. Jenny, I'm going to toss it to you to talk about some of these disruptive environmental factors. Like, what do we do with them at this point? So take that in any direction that you want.
Right. I mean, I feel like one, and maybe just to piggyback also on, I think that now people are going to be trying new things and evolving new things. One thing that I think is just a really important thing, and I can't remember exactly who said it, but it's not one size fits all, right, across the board. It also isn't, we have to make a decision and that is it forever. Right? Like a lot of times people are pulling back and saying, well, we don't really want to do either surveys or research or consumer insights because this isn't how things are going to be for the whole time, right? Like things will change. But right now is when we want to listen, when we want to test and evolve and be okay that making this one decision right now doesn't mean that it has to be how it's going to be forever, right? That we can test and evolve and change. So I think that's a big thing, which comes kind of to this disruptive environment. That's where we just have to really dig in and understand, what do people mean? I think in the beginning it was cleanliness is the one of the main things that people need. Well, 3 months ago, what cleanliness meant is completely different than what cleanliness means now. We need to open the communication to find out, what do people actually mean by that? Engage with them, talk with them. I love that this is opening the opportunity of gathering feedback from our fans, our consumers, along every single touch point to see what's working, what's not working. This isn't us all coming in a room, making a decision, putting it out there and assuming that we're good to go. It is going to continue and evolve. I also think in this disruptive world, it's been such this roller coaster. In the beginning, this event happened, but it's not a one-time thing. Now it's this tail, right? Of then we all went into this shelter in place. Now that it's starting to open up, and as people are in different spots, their comfort level is going to be different. So I think that even this disruptive environment is going to be different. We have to keep the lines of communication. What does quality mean? What does convenience mean? What are people going to be used to now? But then they're getting used to, TSA lines. I don't even know a world without that anymore. That then what are we getting used to, and what is convenience shifting down the road? So I love that now, things are changing so much, but pre-COVID, people wanted their voices to be heard. They wanted to be part of the process. That has not changed. And this is allowing companies and organizations the opportunities to really be the ones, and there will be a big divide of the companies that listen and adapt, and those that are not going to and are going to make room decisions behind closed doors.
Well, I think that dovetails into a question I have for Russ.
Yeah.
And I want to know, based on some of these fan fears, like let's assume that they'll eventually or largely dissipate, right? Like what venue changes though are here to stay with all of this in mind, listening to our consumers, and which ones though should we put on the back burner? Like we can't all of a sudden just change the entire venue around when perhaps in 12 to 18 months in some way, shape or form, we could go back to relative normalcy. Do you have, not necessarily advice for us, but insights on what should change and possibly what should be on the back burner in terms of the change, Russ?
Well, there are some natural times in a facility's evolution where change can actually be made with the least amount of disruption. Usually it's with a major renovation, or when you're opening a new facility, or some type of linchpin benchmark where it is acceptable. In the absence of some type of benchmark, then what you get is both internally and externally, your internal customers as well as your external customers, basically saying, well, why are they doing this? Why isn't what we were doing good enough? Because humans are naturally averse to change. We don't like it. I think that there's an opportunity now. This is a unique enough and large enough event that I think material changes that many people may have been considering, this is going to be an excellent time to actually bring those back into play, because people will be coming back to a new environment, no matter what. As was said, there'll be new cleaning protocols, there'll be new security protocols, there'll be all kinds of things that you haven't seen before. A good example is that I was looking at cashless, and I was looking at the science of cashless. Right now, about 30% approximately of people still use cash. When you look a little deeper, about I think 3 or 4% of those people actually have credit cards, but some people just choose to use cash. So I was reluctant to go to a cashless environment, recognizing that 30% of my guests may really want to use cash in that experience. But now when you look at the emphasis, and where I think it really makes a difference now is in this contactless, it used to be frictionless, now it's this contactless environment, then yeah. So I'm actually switching gears and really advocating cashless right now on a go forward basis. And it's pretty simple to do the reverse ATM stuff and to protect people who might, that 2 to 3% who might not have a credit or debit card. But this is the exact perfect time to do that because there are going to be a number of necessary changes. Some of those will be dictated by federal, state, or local public health authorities and other people who will be involved in our business who aren't on a normal basis. But if you were thinking about making changes, you should be thinking about making those changes now, along with all of the other changes you're making, versus waiting 6 months and then saying, okay, now we're going to do something different again and again. I think that undermines consumer confidence in us, and I think it undermines brand confidence in us. And I think Jenny would be a good, you might weigh in terms, you heard me say yesterday that I don't think as an industry we do a very good job of taking the time to understand the brand's goals and objectives and all the work that they do to understand their consumer and all the things that are going to be important to them. We tend to take the check and say, great, we'll put up your sign and we're still going to do things the way we do them. I'm not sure that that's in our best interest. And this hopefully will change and enlighten a lot of our thinking about how we do things and how we incorporate those things in the decisions we make going forward.
Jenny, Russ asked you a question there. Do you want to weigh in or should I pivot here?
Yeah, no, I mean, man, I could dig in. I know we were chatting about yesterday. I think in general, and I think it even comes back to kind of Justin and that customer experience, right? When any of these either arenas, stadiums, wherever we are, and connecting with brands, what do those brands want their customers to know, feel, and do, right? And we want to make sure of how do we incorporate that into the experience that they have. So if they're an arena, obviously, and they've got a name on the side of it, we should be incorporating those types of things. It should have a different feel depending on where you are, of what they want it to be. And I think that's kind of what Justin does, is how does that come to life? I think you were saying the icing on the cake, that that you've got a different feel depending on where you are. And I love that it's honoring not only the consumers and what they're telling you, but the brands and the partnerships that you are. I think of strengthening that relationship is huge. And how to do that is, I think I could talk for hours about that, but I know we've got lots more there, but I think it's a great thing. Yep, Justin.
This also goes back to us knowing our we started off talking about consumer behavior, but this goes back to about knowing our customers. There are parts of our organizations, team and public assembly facilities, where there are parts that are really spend a lot of time in knowing our customer. In this post-COVID environment, we're going to have to know more about our customer consistently, and people who might have escaped the obligation to really be paying attention to our customers' desires and our brand's desires are no longer going to be able to do that. We're going to have a larger, more comprehensive understanding of our customers, their wants and their desires, what their expected behavior of us is going to be in order for us to create confidence in them coming back consistently to our environment.
And I think back to the conversation about brands, I think the brands have a more powerful position than they've ever had right now because of this, because the philosophical misalignment between a team and a venue and the brands that are paying to be in there, especially thinking about how COVID has impacted their world and their workers, their philosophy about how to do business is just not going to be acceptable anymore. We're going to be forced to strengthen those relationships, I think.
We're seeing changes in the marketplace. You just saw that Bank of California is sort of repositioning their current naming rights deal with the Los Angeles Football Club, and there are several other examples. I mean, and you can expect more of this to come. So I think brands are in a really important position, and if we don't prepare to meet them with the same enthusiasm and understand their language and their vernacular and be prepared to deliver to them what they spend an enormous amount of time and money in terms of understanding their customer and evaluating and assessing that consumer behavior, then I think brands may look at where they're spending money and maybe some of us aren't going to match up.
Well, data can drive that, I think. And Karri, I want you to hit on us gathering information about our consumers with that data, but also, with the underpinning that some consumers may still be apprehensive about their information being shared. How can we marry convenience and data? How can our consumers appreciate that we're using the data for them? Can you expand on that a little bit?
I think what people want to know is, how is their data being used, and is it for a purpose that directly benefits them? Does it truly give them added convenience, some sort of perk benefit that they otherwise wouldn't have had access to? So again, if I go back to facial recognition and biometrics-based payments, it is widely proven through statistics that 93% of people prefer biometrics-based authentication when paying to a traditional password. So they don't mind giving up that data because it's truly a convenience. It allows them to log in faster. They don't have to remember passwords, manually enter those things in. Similarly, if we tie the use of data in a post-COVID world to benefits to the consumer, well, we can tell with this data that we can maintain social distancing. We can tell you information about the health of other people around you. We can expedite you getting into the building, staying away from people, getting out more quickly, not having to touch surfaces. All of those things offer true value that the trade-off between giving up that data to the benefits they obtain far outweigh. So I think that it's important to just have a purpose for it. I think as an industry, we've tended to say, well, we just want all this data, and then a lot of people don't know what to do with it, and they don't know how to put it into action and give it a purpose. And I think it's going to be very important to have a clear objective as to what you're doing with that and why, that's then clearly articulated back to fans.
Well, Jenny hit on that yesterday, and she said data shouldn't exist in silos. Tell us more.
100%. I mean, yes. Everything that you're saying. I think that companies right now, I love living in this data space. Obviously, I've been in this space for 35 years, our company, and the explosion of what they have. It feels like right now it's very hungry hippo style of everyone is just collecting as much data as they have. I think, Karri, you said it exactly. What are we going to be doing with it? Like, what is the objective? And then how are we going to respectfully collect it? And honor the people that we're collecting it about, right? These are actually human beings on the other side, and communicate with them what you're doing with the information is huge. I think it, in regards to, so on every level, communication, when we're collecting data on them, when we're asking them to do any sort of feedback or survey, thank you for your feedback. This is what we're doing with it. Honor the people that we're collecting their information about, not just treating them like a number. But in regards to the silos also, and I think, Russ, you touched on it, even with the employees or the front lines, our customers and consumers are talking to us at all times. They're out there talking to the frontline guys, they're out there talking to to each other online and social and whatnot. There's so many people I talked to, and they said, I wonder what our customers are thinking. And then I'll turn to them, I said, have you actually talked to your frontline workers, to your call center people? Like, what are the numbers of reasons that are coming in? Like, we should all be communicating more with each other, because most times organizations are sitting on the information that they might need. And one of the things that we always do, as opposed to just coming back with stats or numbers, is asking the question of why might that be? Why might that be? And just keep asking a little bit more, right? If which I think, Karri, you kind of touched on it. If 93%, I think you said, of people are more comfortable with the facial, we could have stopped there. But why might that be? Because they know that what we're going to be doing with it, because it made them feel safer, because these things. So once we turned it into action, we can do something with it. That's what we're always trying to figure out, is asking that question of why might that be? That's where the competitive advantage, where we're getting to the insights that are underneath, more than just collecting it in silos and just reporting back numbers. It's just wasteful. Of everybody's time and energy. Yeah.
Well, with that said, Russ, what are some of the leading venues that you've seen? And I don't need specifics here, but what are the venues doing with the data that is being meaningful and impactful?
Well, it does vary by organization, and a great many professional sports teams have robust infrastructure that can help to not only collect but analyze the data and actually make decisions with it. There's a number of technologies on the physical facilities side that are coming into the forefront right now. One that comes to mind is what's called the digital twin. In digital twin technology, you're actually building a digital version of your building. It's connected to all the data points from all of your systems systems and your mechanical, electrical, plumbing, your coolers, that type of thing. And I think we have finally gone by the tipping point where we're done making decisions based on gut and instinct, and now letting data drive our decision-making process. And if you're somebody like me, it is embarrassing for me to admit how wrong I was in the past, because I made decisions based on how I learned things, and this is just what we did. And when I think about what I know from a data standpoint now, great example was in an arena environment, used to say, well, we're going to cool the building 4 hours before the public comes in. We had no science that said it was, that's just what we always did. Now we find out based on the efficiencies of our systems, that type of thing, maybe we only need to cool it for an hour and a half. And that meant that I might as well have opened the doors and just poured money out through the doors for 2.5 wasted hours. And again, experience tells me and age that I'm okay and I'm comfortable being as wrong as I was. And now I don't want to make any decision without as much information as humanly possible. And as an industry, we have a variety of levels of like what we have, and we're getting better at it, and we're getting better at using it. And the integrating systems that we have and the technologies and all of our subsystems are helping us be better at what we're doing.
Karri.
I think one other thing that's important to keep in mind is that a lot of the data that venues and teams already have, you might be able to leverage those in different ways. So a couple of examples, we leverage a lot of location detection technologies in our platform. And previously we used that data to perform things such as targeted marketing based on someone's location, wayfinding services, those kinds of things. But now if you can change that same data set, but to be able to calculate things such as social distancing, or it's not about wait times in a line, but it's about the density of that line. How many people are actually standing there to provide that information back to fans and guests in a venue to assuage concerns or give them information that helps them navigate in a different way. So I think it's also important to you might be sitting on the data, but haven't thought of how to apply it differently.
That's the question that I have for Justin is how do you apply it? You're an experiential company that brings brands, brings venues, sponsors to life. But at this point, you also have the opportunity in front of you to be informational in what your experiences are providing. Can you go a little bit deeper on that one for us?
Sure. I think, these venues are not all, some are more progressive and further ahead than others, but largely digital places. I mean, whether they're in sponsored fan experience spaces or whether it's digital signage, there are lots of opportunities to take the data that Karri was just discussing that we're collecting and then push that out to the fans so that they understand the building around them. We're all carrying these computers in our pockets as well, and everything from being able to pay for your concessions via mobile, or to be able to take that data that says that there's this particular concourse is overly dense, or this line is too long for a restroom or for a concession, and to be able to push that out to people in proximity is an extraordinary tool.
Jenny, this is maybe an aside, but I think it goes hand in hand. Is this a time right now when with all of this, we can strengthen the relationship that we have with our customers by leaning in on all of this?
100%. I mean, that's what I hope that comes out of this, is that it strengthens that they feel like they've been part of the process, part of the discussions, having this. I mean, if you didn't have a voice of customer program before and voice of employee program, right? Because a lot of times people say, oh, you're a survey company, you're like Survey Monkey. Yes, and the fact that I do surveys, I'll say, but what we really like, and a lot of times research projects are one way, right? We're going to ask questions, it's to hit our objective, and then that's it. This is now this back and forth. We need to think about it as a voice of the customer, listening to them, understanding to them, turn all that information over to Justin to put that icing on the cake of what they want. I mean, how exciting is it when you give feedback to somebody and then it comes back and you actually saw that they took your insight and they changed their service, they changed their products. I mean, it's such a fulfilling, they feel more loyalty. So I mean, I think it's strengthening that customer experience. and why we want that is because then it's strengthening the relationship, the loyalty, the trust, the recommendations. I mean, if you can get someone to be, in this amazing fan base that is here and how passionate people are, even more connected with their stadiums and with their teams during this process, 100%. And it doesn't have to even be huge. Of what you have to do, if we heard you, we're listening to you, you probably already had some things in the queue of, wow, we've listened to you and now we've got facial recognition. Now we've got these queued up lines. Now we have this information. Communicating, and this is where the divide is going to be with the companies that are leaning in, listening, and changing their services because of what their customers and employees are saying. And even the employees, on that kind of point of what Russ had before, they're going to be more excited and passionate about where they have 100%.
I want to offer a word of caution. In just the same way as Justin was talking about how we manage through data. The example I'll use is prior to COVID-19, I could go to a hotel, I could check in online. My phone was my digital key. I essentially was able to have the entire experience in that hotel without ever talking with or interfacing with anybody. And for us in a public assembly facility environment, I want to, again, the word of caution is these are gathering spaces. They're about human contact and shared experience. I think we've got to be cautious to not create an environment where we've now done this antiseptic thing, and by the very nature of what we've trying to accomplish, we've lost that human touch. We've lost that experience. I'm not saying we're going to change the quality of the musical performance or the outcome of the game, but there is something that completes that, which is the usher that went the extra mile, or someone who greeted you at the door, or somebody who stepped up and asked if they could help you and your husband, because your husband will never ask for directions, but you so much appreciate that you don't have to walk the concourse for an hour trying to figure out where to go. So I'm 100% in on data, as I talked about earlier, how important it is for making the right decisions. But it's not in the absence of human contact and that shared experience. And we just need to be careful, and we need to make sure that we're doing the other things that are going to be necessary to complete the experience.
Okay, hang on that point then for just a minute, and Jenny, I'll come to you in just a second here. Our core is premium, Russ. That is part of the social experience. You get in a suite with 16 other people, or a loge box with 4 to 6 others. You're going in as a tight-knit little community group, or frankly, you're entertaining clients that you have to talk to, that you want to talk to. What does premium need to learn from this? Because I think you pretty much already drove it home, but what else?
Well, just think about the premium journey. You're approaching the building, you're arriving, you're going through security, you're going to go to probably a premium entrance with elevators. You come through, your phone is going to be scanned. You can use a boundary or other device to scan to get into the suite. And literally everything up until that point has likely been pretty antiseptic, right? So now what's important is the people who are in the suite, the people who are helping to serve and provide food and service, but also along the way. It's not just, yes, we've scanned your phone, your barcode, your Q code, whatever that is, you can now go to this next step, but how do you actually bring some person and some personality and some shared experience, some warmth? Data's cold, right? So let's make sure we're bringing some warmth, and literally that has a lot to do with not just hiring anybody to do any job. In premium, I think we'll all agree it's really important to have people who are comfortable with themselves, who are going to reach out, who are going to look to try to create the details that's going to make that memory experiential. So it'd be easy to forget this. It would be easy to say, hey, I could do this with less people. I could do it more efficiently. I can do all these things, but in doing so, we're basically undermining our entire purpose.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was interesting in our survey was that there was inherently a much higher level of trust of people working in the venue. So fans inherently believe that the teams and the venue operators are doing the right thing, and presume that the people, the greeters, the ticket takers, the concessionaires are healthy. And so at least a little glimpse into things tells me that we don't need fewer of those. We just need some of the practices in which they're employing to be to give us more confidence.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Russ, 100%. I mean, I love obviously all the data stuff, but we've got kind of 4 levels. And I think where we had said before, obviously we've got data down here. If companies only survive on data and only doing that hungry hippo, they will not survive. It needs to move up to customer insights. And that's when we actually put human beings on there, then knowledge and wisdom. I mean, that's when then we're moving up. If we're just making data-driven decisions, but I don't think that's what we're doing. We're looking at them as actual human beings. What do they want? What do they have? And I mean, right now, personal interaction is a luxury item right now. I mean, right now, when I see anybody, I mean, I am like hugging, my family tighter than I have. And now that I'm opening up my little bubble, we 100% cannot forget. And I think as we talk about data, that there are human beings on the other side. This is why it's a voice of the customer. Who are these people? Honoring them. I think it's a really, really good point as we get caught up, and not caught up, but we're leveraging data in order to make these customer insights and make this more human of what people want. So I think it's a great point that we always need to be leaning into.
Here's a question. I wonder what demographic, or maybe demographics plural, or how are they dealing with this differently? I do agree with what you all are saying, that absence kind of makes the heart grow fonder. I would agree with that. My oldest had a play date today, and I asked the mom when she came over, can I hug you? Because I missed her. I hadn't seen her in forever. And so I do think that this is making us, the light bulb is going off, that we do want that human interaction. But to Russ's point, I think it's easy to forget that. And it is also easier, and perhaps this is me being more presumptive than I should be, but maybe like that younger demographic may not need that as much. They're so accustomed to being on their phone all the time that maybe that human interaction isn't, that antiseptic, as Russ points out, maybe that's more normal for them. I don't know, Russ, it looks like you're off mute. You've got something to add.
Yeah, they don't know what they need. Sorry, that was that was just to be funny. We have been facing for a long time a dichotomy in our customer. For me, it's 35 and under and 40 and older, and I really don't know what to do with the 35 to 40. So let's just leave that out for the sake of math, okay? The older demographic is the one with the greatest disposable income. They're making the largest commitments in terms of time and money that they spend in our facilities. The younger demographic is just sort of the wild, wild west. And if we put it in terms of COVID, if we opened a facility tomorrow and had a concert, it would be full of young people. You don't have to go very far to see the behaviors as the states are opening up and the different areas that are going on in terms of their expectations are different, their needs are different, and it's been a growing challenge for facility operators and teams to figure out how do we actually manage the expectations of both of those pretty distinct demographics simultaneously, within the context of a facility or an event. I mean, that's not a new challenge based on COVID. I think it's probably going to be exacerbated afterwards because everybody's going to come back in their corners. The older demographic is going to be much more reluctant to accept that it's safe to go to a mass gathering environment. It's going to take a great deal of confidence and comfort to be able for them to make the psychological leap. And I don't want to use the words going back to the way things were before. I don't believe that things are ever going to be the way they were before. Some things might look like that, but they're going to be similar. But these are going to be wholesale fundamental changes in what we do for both of those demographics. And so I think the challenges that we face as operators and owners of teams are going to be more extreme in terms of how do we solve for both of these situations simultaneously. It's something we all need to be thinking about right now.
Karri, do you have, I don't know, maybe even deeper data on that with what you're studying right now? Is there a stronger demographic than others that are using and are wanting the use of their data and or biometrics, et cetera?
I think what we're finding is absolutely a young-old divide. I think there are certain older demographics that it doesn't matter what you're going to do, they're just not going to come back. And so I think some of the hesitations that had previously been in place around trying to accommodate, as Russ mentioned, like cash for older demographics that tend to use cash more frequently, maybe less of a concern to have to make those accommodations. And I'd be curious, Justin, from your fan fear survey and how those buckets broke down, if you saw a correlation in the data around either gender or age profile on the ones that were in those two extremes. The other thing I would just mention is that we found a gender divide between women being more conservative in terms of coming back more slowly versus men tending to have less concerns about things like health or safety and being more willing to go back into a venue earlier. So that's interesting as well.
I don't, Karri, I don't think we did have a big distinct difference between genders, but there definitely was a distinct difference between ages. And I think Russ described it pretty perfectly, and that the younger folks were more apt to come back more quickly than some of the older folks were.
Just one other thing on this. This was work we had done prior to COVID, but just kind of speaks to the point about knowing the customers and asking them for input in this. We had done different kinds of UI design workshops whereby we had hypotheses about what would appeal to older versus younger demographics. And what we found in the data was the exact opposite of what our hypothesis was. In that particular example, we thought, smaller icons cramming more onto a screen would be appealing to younger demographic, whereas the larger tiles or imagery would be more appealing to the older demographic. And it was the exact opposite. And the reason was the younger demographic was much more comfortable with scrolling, whereas the older demographic wanted to see everything on one screen and not have to navigate off of that screen. So again, just a little anecdote, but it really kind of speaks to not making some of these assumptions and really trying to understand what really is going to move the needle with people or assuage their concerns.
Jenny?
I will say outside of the sports industry, so looking at quite a bit of other studies as well, that it is really interesting and kind of counter than what we would think. But some of the younger generations, the Gen Y or Gen Z, actually is showing a lot of anxiety around this issue and around not being around social type of stuff. They want to be able to be coming back to the offices. They want to be having the human interaction. And so I think it's a really good thing that not making those assumptions of just because they're kind of younger and used to all the technology that they don't want that interaction. It was really interesting, some of the stuff that we've been seeing, that this kind of younger generation is very anxious about just COVID in general, what it means, what's going on in their world. And that they don't, I really thought, especially we've been looking at a lot of the work from home type of things. I thought, well, none of them will want to come back to the office. That is not the case. And I think that there's lots of reasons, right? They want to be interacting with others, senior learning, trying to figure out their place of what's going on, where I think some of the older demographic, they know what they're doing, they know where they are, things. So I think it depends on the area of what we're looking at. That this younger generation, especially just with not having the human interaction, the anxiety levels, kind of the depression, the isolation, that is not, it's something that we really just need to be making sure we're aware of, that they for sure want to be social with others.
Well, that's the responsibility that is laid upon all of us on this panel and beyond, where they might want to come back, where experience is going to mean a lot to them, where no social distancing, if they can do it, it's in front of them. They want to go get it. They have a desire for it. But we have to take it upon ourselves to have safety front of mind. Maybe for them at some point it might be back of mind, but us as operators and us in the industry have to always keep that in mind, and it is our responsibility. And so that's the topic I want to end on today. And I'll go to Karri first on this one, is like convenience equals experience, right? Like we all agree on that, but how can convenience also equal safety? Like that's so powerful to think that all of these things that we are doing to keep people clean, and even to use the antiseptic word, like that still is, it still can be fun. It can still be an experience, but that underpinned safety has to be front of mind for all of us, even if it isn't for our guests. And Karri, I'll leave that one with you.
I think a lot of these solutions that we're looking at now, which maybe previously were looked at solely for the purpose of convenience, they happen to go hand in hand with safety. And so it's going to be important as venues communicate their policies that they're giving the reasons why and making sure that it addresses the safety angle. So I don't necessarily think that these are mutually exclusive. They go hand in hand. When we look at technologies that can literally measure social distancing, you're killing, two birds with one stone potentially. when you're looking at moving people through lines more quickly. Obviously, that's a convenience factor, but people's real motivation might not be that they don't want to wait. It may be that they don't want to be around that many people in short order. And so, again, the beauty is that a lot of this may exist for many years, but the way in which you communicate the benefits of it may evolve over time.
I think Jenny made that point earlier. So Jenny, I'll go to you next, and it will give each person here the opportunity to address the safety piece as we kind of start to conclude here. Go for it, Jenny.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing of why we're doing it, but now that we're going to be able to open this up and have some experiences with this, is in the benefit of there. I think is a really good thing. The data security, I mean, this is such a crazy topic right now, and there's so much misinformation out there of how people are using and what they're doing. I mean, we've got out here in California, the CCPA, of like all this information about how data is being used. If we can communicate with them why we're using it, and then the benefit to them on the back end and how they're going to benefit from it, it's going to be huge. And that we're responsibly using their information and their data that they can see in full transparency, I think is the biggest thing that we have.
Yeah. Justin, piggyback on that if you would.
Yeah, I think I'm going to jump back to what Karri was saying. I think this really is an exciting time. And Jenny used the word evolution earlier. And I like what Karri said with regards to the, I guess, accidental benefit of some of these new protocols that are going to be put into place that are going to make the overall experience better. Yes, there are some of these that have the opportunity to be antiseptic, but there are others that have the ability to make your concession experience not only cleaner and safer, but better. Make your bathroom experience not only cleaner and safer, but better. Getting into and out of the venue. We've had a handful of conversations lately about staggered start times like museums do. Staggered entry times. They're going to be the diehard fans that are tailgaters that are going to say, absolutely not, you're killing my experience. There are going to be other people that say, hallelujah, you tell me to go in the building at 12:47, I'll be there at 12:47 if it means I don't have to stand in the line. So, I think we're going to create some things that are going to have surprise benefits.
I would agree with that. Russ, let's hammer this one home on the safety side. I would say that we've talked so much about like the experience today and wanting to make it still good and not antiseptic and still giving the opportunity to connect at venues. Just again, take us home with a little bit more of a closing thought there.
Well, it's like we mentioned earlier, if you were thinking about doing things, now would be a time to do them. I don't think there's any responsible security person out there right now who is not having a fundamental conversation about the elimination of bags. We've seen this in a number of collegiate environments already. We've seen reduction in bags. We've seen the NFL leading the rest of the industry on clear bags. And now as we start to move from frictionless to contactless, and the idea of just you could eliminate bags. And I think everybody from a pure security standpoint would agree that's going to make us safer. So this may be that tipping point that allows the industry to actually do something that many of us that are on the security side would have wanted to do and execute a long time ago. That may now be able to be accepted and incorporated into this new environment.
Is there a budget shift, you think? And again, I don't need expertise necessarily, but just your opinion here. Budgets have to shift from where it may have been an experiential side is now the cleaning budget has to get a little bit bigger. The security budget may have to get a little bit bigger.
Yeah, no, I think that most folks are like me. We're basically saying, hey, here's what we were looking at with budgets, and now what are the COVID-19 impacts? And there will certainly be impacts in cleaning, and not and it's materials and it's equipment and it's people and supervisors. So, for example, I think we're going to be at risk at cleaning in ways that we haven't been at sort of since security. What we learned in post 9/11 security is that our customers wanted a visible and obvious presence. They wanted to really see that we were doing what we said we were going to do. And I know that there were some people in the pure security side said, well, some of what you're doing is theater. And I'm going to agree, yes. But that theater is actually an important component to establishing consumer confidence and then will then drive consumer behavior. In this case, we have to be careful about what we say we're going to do, because if we say it, we have to do it. And in the past, a person that was involved in cleaning during an event may have equated movement, just keep moving, as the successful execution of their duties. But now people are going to be watching. They can't just be moving. They have to be doing all the things that we say we're going to do. We may have to put porters and matrons in the restrooms. Like, there's a societal discomfort with that in many parts of our country. And then there's other places like North Carolina is a place where I see it consistently. So these are things that are going to change. If you want security personnel to actually be performing more consistently, you're going to need more supervision. The other thing is for security and cleaning personnel, in the past, we took a page out of Disney. We helped them disappear. Their uniforms blended in with the rest of the crowd, and all that stuff got magically done outside of the customer's vision. Now we're probably going to have to bring them out. We're going to have to change their uniform. Again, visible and obvious presence. So there are going to be fixed costs. There are going to be enhanced costs for the cleaning products we use, the equipment that we use, in order to be able to say, here's what we're doing, and have that be acceptable not only to the public health authority and the state health authorities, but also to your customers. Is this facility, is this place doing everything that I would expect them to do? And it was mentioned earlier, women are our toughest audience. So we have to be able to demonstrate that we're doing what we say we're going to do, because hyperbole and marketing speak is not going to be an acceptable outcome from the circumstances that we're in.
Thanks, Russ. It's a great point to end on. And the last thing that I'll say is I was poking around on everybody's LinkedIn the other day, and Karri had a cute philosophical line on there that what she does makes the way people experience spaces easier, more personal, and enjoyable. And I realize that may have been written before COVID, but I think it speaks volumes now. And so I think that's a great line to end on as well. Karri, anything to say there?
I think we'll have to append that with.
I would say so too. Yep, safety's at the heart of everything. So listen, guys, before we end today, I want to make sure that everyone in the audience knows that ALSD cares deeply about those that were directly or indirectly affected and continue to be by the COVID-19 situation. It's a very serious thing, and we understand that it's grave for some out there, and we care about you all. We also care about these panelists. To go on and on a lighter note, each one of these people brings such an area of expertise that we can just glom onto and take our own learnings from it. So I know Russ at least put his email up there. Chat with these folks on LinkedIn or wherever else you'd like to. Connect with me at any time. I would love to speak to you all more. Appreciate this panel more than you all realize. Thank you so much for your insights. And until next time, everybody be safe and take care of yourselves.